Hello guys, today we will be presenting about China's leaders, a study on Mao Zedong and Deng Xiaoping's leadership personality empowerment. So before we start, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Elil, daughter of S.Ganesaraja, and my matric number is 259269.
My name is Fauzi, 259456.
I'm Mohd Shahredza with Ridhwan, 262906.
And my name is Muhammad Iskandar Zulkarnain, 263560.
Okay, I'll begin with the introduction about this study. First of all, we're going to talk about leadership. This is the key thing in our whole presentation for today. So, what we can see into leadership, why we give importance for this topic is because leadership in 21st century is very important because leadership is widely used in all sectors, no matter it's a corporate sector or it's a government sector. In all the sectors, leadership are very important. Besides, leadership has become part and parcel of daily life. For instance, if we look into a family, let it be a family, not a corporate world or not a government, but then let it look into a family. So when it comes to a family, the father have a vital role in leading the whole family. If the father does not do his role correctly, like guiding the children, guiding the wife, and providing them with money and other basic needs, probably the family would collapse. Maybe the couples would get divorced. Maybe the children would have some mental or physical problems due to the non-proper leading way. So leading is very important. Having a good leadership is a vital thing for daily lives. It has become the current pastor, as I said before. So now let's get into our main topic over here. We have understood why leadership is important. Now let's see about China's leadership because we are going to look into China's previous leaders and their achievements and their enforcements. Because if you look into China, within 50 years of gap, they have a vast improvement in their economic wise in their country. The nation have developed. For instance, before in 1976, their first leader sorry, uh, Mao Zedong died, and then in 1978, Deng Xiaoping came into power. So before 1978, during the Mao Zedong time, the people they were pursuing more to communist style because they were under Soviet, so they were highly holding their communist ideologies, and they don't have much of a development because of their ideology itself. Their economy was closed economy. They didn't have any bilateral relation or multilateral relation within other countries, so they couldn't enhance their country due to the economic problem, because when economic is good in a country, then it contributes to the development. So that's the reason of their stagnant progress in the beginning. Then in 1978, they pursued non-Soviet style economy policy. They reformed there's a reformation to a free market policy that is done by Deng Xiaoping. So when Deng Xiaoping did that, their economy started to grow. So we can see how the previous leader and current the Deng Xiaoping did they're different. Their policy was quite different, and how the difference make to development. So that is the main thing we're going to discuss in overall of our presentation today. So, and we see when they have changes in the leadership qualities, eventually it leads to enhancement and development of their economy. So China has become the second largest economy in the world right now because of leadership. Thus, leadership, I would like to say that thus the leadership is very important, and we must learn from histories, and current situation is also important, not only histories but current situation also. That's why I say leadership is very important throughout the year, and we have to look back into the history just to gain some knowledge from it. So besides, we should know that good leadership can empower and contribute to development, and we can understand that if you look further throughout the further presentation, you will understand that. Okay, let's move to the next slide. Okay, now introduction is done, and now I'm going to talk about direct versus indirect leadership. Okay, this is just a basic thing that I'm going to explain. Will be much more detailed explanation coming in upcoming slides by another presenter. So I would just like to give brief introduction about direct and versus indirect. Previous slide, yeah. direct versus indirect leadership. So what is direct and indirect basically means? If you see, direct means something which is straightforward. So that's what you can understand from direct. And indirect means something which is not straightforward. So when it comes to direct, it is straightforward and it is more like enforcement. You enforce people into believing stuffs and doing stuff. It's like set of rules. When you work in a company, you have standard of procedures to follow the rules, and basically you have the need to respect your company CEO, your boss, like that. So that is a direct leadership. Basically means it means you're following something. And then indirect leadership is much more likely. Is indirect means you are influencing peoples. So it's like include, I could say it includes management. It's like arts of getting things done by others, which means effortlessly you are doing things, like no physical or mental exertion. Means you don't force people to do stuff, they are willingly doing it for you. That's how indirect leadership works. So if we look into Mao Zedong, he's more like authoritarian. Why I say is that because he like to enforce that he is the leader of a team. He doesn't care about people accepting him as a leader or not, but he enforces it. He says he's the leader. Besides of that, he also said that my character, I'm partially monkey and I'm partially tiger, like that. So you can see he enforces his power over there. So that shows that, yeah. And then besides his policies and stuff, he doesn't listen to people actually. So you can there will be much more explanation in coming, will be explained by upcoming presenters. And then when we look into Deng Xiaoping, he's much more like a balancing a leader. He's much more indirect. I would say he's indirect because he did a balancing development and democracy. Although it is a communist country, China is a communist country, he never let go the ideology. But then he tried to balance the development and he did use some of democratic style when he opened up the economy. So he does give importance to the people. So that is the main difference between direct and indirect leadership. So, and I would like to emphasize that type of leadership is important because for policy making and to lead people and to create a betterment in a country. For example, if a country is a peri-peri country or semi-peri-peri country, it means a less developed or developing country. To make it become developing or like developed country, you have to put in the effort, and the effort is not only about the citizen, but then the leader has to create the path for the citizen to follow and reach the developed status. So that's why leadership is very important. And I guess that's all from my part, and I'll pass it to the next presenter. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. So in my part, I will explain about how Mao Zedong and Deng Xiaoping rise into power. Okay, first of all, we're gonna took a look at Mao Zedong. Okay, Chairman Mao, or known as Mao Zedong, was the Chinese radical who was the architect of the People's Republic of China. He governed the formation of in 1949 until his passing in 1976 as the chairman of the Communist Party in China. After China emerged as the most populous country in the world of insurrection and embarked on the journey of a trade and industry growth and communal reform, Mao Zedong employed a crucial position in history of the nation's renaissance. The child of an ex-laborer who had a rich turned out to be from a rich farmer, Mao Zedong was born from a village of Shaoshan in Hunan. He raised up in an atmosphere which only preparation for possession records and account was valued as education. Mao Zedong taught his family to pursue his study at an elementary school in other district, later continue high school at Changsha, district capital. Here, as conveyed by such partisan and the nationalist revolutionary Sun Yat-sen, Mao Zedong approached into the interaction with new thought from the West. His first brief military encounter at least reinforced his childhood respect for army leaders and achievement. His idol comprised not just the prodigious warrior emperors of the Chinese, but also, nevertheless, Napoleon. Mao Zedong finished 6 months as a soldier, enlisting in a revolutionary army unit in Hunan. Though he certainly had not yet clearly understood the notion that political power rises from the barrel of a weapon. As he later put it, his first brief military encounter at least reinforced his childhood in army perspective. In Jiangxi period focuses on establishment of the Jiangxi Soviet in part of the region in Jiangxi in November of 1931 with Mao as a leader. The common opinion in the past years of the Soviet Jiangxi, Mao Zedong operated to a significant figurehead with slight political influence, especially in military matters. During the Long March at the Zhuhai Conference on January 1935, he obtained de facto control over the party, even though he is not yet the official title of the chairman. Mao Zedong pastoral journey, which was to be remarked by a revived unified front against Japan with nationalist Mao increased to almost-struck party dominance. In May 1936, for the first time, the Chinese Communists, led by Mao Zedong, acknowledged the possibility that Chiang Kai-shek, the nationalist leader, could be included in such a united front, not just dissident element in the nationalist side. The standing of a new unified front between the communists and the nationalists had been practically agreed by the time when Japanese start their attempt to conquer all part of China in July 1937, and the formal agreement was declared in 19 September 1937, and Mao said that the Chinese uprising was part of the global working class revolution focused internally against colonialism. From this perspective, he gained the power to lead the Communist Party in order to fight against the colonialism from Japan. The matters of nationalist and communist competition for the control of the United Front are linked to the ongoing struggle for dominance within the CCP. Since Mao Zedong, two key competitors, Wang Ming, which just came back from Moscow, and another individual is Zhang Guotao, who had first declined to recognize Mao Zedong's political and military leadership, were both suspect of unnecessary slavishness to the nationalists. In March 1943, Mao gained official dominance over the party for the first time, becoming the president of the secretariat and the political bureau. Nevertheless, together, Mao and Stalin, the leader of the Soviet Union, made the most of the state affairs when the communists took power in China. He succeeded in persuading Stalin, after 2 months of tough negotiation, to conclude a mutual assistance treaty followed by minimal economic aid. And then Mao Zedong announced the establishment of the People's Republic of China on October 1st, 1949 at the Tiananmen Square, and later that week he proclaimed that he is the communist leader and also the chairman of the People of Republic of China. And now, moving to the second leaders which we are discussing, which is Deng Xiaoping. Deng Xiaoping was part of the military leaders during Mao Zedong's leadership. After the Cultural Revolution started, basically it's just an eradication counter to top leaders such as Liu Shaoqi, Deng Xiaoping, and the party that controlled the apparatus of the state at that time. Was initiated originally by Mao Zedong. Right after the letdown of his plan, which is the Great Leap Forward, they removed Mao Zedong from direct control. Mao's personal Bonapartist authority was no longer consistent with the needs of an established and consolidated administration, but went under radical anti-bureaucratic slogans. Mao organized students, farmers, and the jobless into the Red Guards. He undimmed a boiling reservoir of resentment. Entire government groups were seeking to exploit the disobedient youth for their own needs. Once in motion, the radicalized youth went well outside of the goal of the Mao Zedongs to remove his opponent. Unprompted yet diplomatically rough tactics revealed that the bureaucracy's freedom exploitation by Mao Zedong. After, after Mao had been involuntary to slow the tide himself, cooperating to his opponent. Mao Zedong passed his authority to subdue the Red Guard by using the army and the militia. Factional clashes have resulted in a brutal armed conflict in many regions and perhaps millions have died in the blood-stained repression of the incident. The party leadership rested on an unstable alliance of factions during the Cultural Revolution, before Deng Xiaoping's new dominance, together with Zhou Enlai as main corresponding individual. Economic strategy fluctuates amongst change, focus on restructuring imported technology, reward for managers and entrepreneurs, and the return of top Beijing leadership from above to strengthen the dominance over the economy and state resources. The leadership, however, was still dominated by a rivalry of the radical outsiders, which won position throughout the Cultural Revolution, and the official for control of the country apparatus. The official around Zhou Enlai and Deng Xiaoping reconquered power step by step. Deng Xiaoping re-established the whole of the old administrator after an interim time under the compromise leader Hua Guofeng. Deng Xiaoping, with countless, applied a similar technique to Mao Zedong in his fight for power. Deng Xiaoping promoted mass pressure on his opponent. Start with the 1977 Tiananmen occurrence, when thousands remembered the first anniversary of Zhou Enlai's death. This directed to the Democratic Movement, partially organized by Deng Xiaoping Group, but also instinctively articulating the concern of young laborers and the unemployed. With essentially unequal demand, the campaign included very mixed social forces. There was enthusiasm for the peace and growth that Deng's reform policy had obviously promised, but the movement introduced as a fifth modernization of China. Deng also proposed an economic modernization in order to gain support from the people. Some of these certainly raise the ideal of modern capitalism, while others think that with the notion of socialist equality. Approximately of the flows pose a unique challenge to the bureaucracy, while tumbling short of certain program for the coup of the administration, also the creation of labor's democracy. Predictably, Deng Xiaoping tried to overpower it, imprisoning some of its foremost figures and prohibiting its publication after exploiting the protest movement for his own purposes in order to rise into power and become the next leader of China. Such manifestation of massive resistance for their shortcoming powerful indicator to the future. Later, the new generation will challenge China governing them bureaucracy based on a fortified proletariat and a much advanced level of culture. Moreover, closer relation with the global economy would mean that the proletariat movement globally would have much superior influence on the China future. Deng Xiaoping control is very dominant for the time being, but those optimistic queens support commentators who praise Deng Xiaoping as a man with innovative resolution. Forget that the 82 years old veteran is once again starting from where his old boss, Liu Shaoqi, left off before the Cultural Revolution. Putting related reform to the current circumstances, Deng Xiaoping is not a radically new phase of the Chinese Revolution, but only a new chapter in the bureaucracy's period, but one that will have many consequences for the proletariat of China. Deng gradually rose into power after the passing of Chairman Mao Zedong in 1976 and ran China through a sequence of far-reaching market economy restructuring which gained him the status being the architect of modern China. So that is how both of the leaders of China get into powers, and we can see that Deng Xiaoping is far more modernized rather than the conservative Mao Zedong. Okay, thank you for my part, and now it will be continued by other group leaders.
Leaders do have their own style, have their own ideology, and their own implementation of executing their policy when they are in power. The only differences that they made is how their leadership has impacted the people and influencing both people to oblige to such ideas. Both great leaders of China has brought the country to rise as powerful as the other world superpowers, claiming their spot into the competitive world arena of influence and ideology. In this part, I will explain the personality of both leaders, Mao Zedong and Deng Xiaoping. People said that past experience can shape someone's personality entirely, and these both leaders is the example of the word, as their personality and policy was shaped through their past experience before they rise to power. Mao was born and grew up with much political, social, and cultural change throughout his early years. He also witnessed the revolution in 1911 that showed the power of imperialism that caused much effect to China, witnessed the already weakening Qing dynasty in which he participated in too. Witnessing through the Sino-Japanese War, fighting in the mountains of Jiangxi through the assault of Kuomintang and the occupation of the Japanese army afterwards, those experiences had shaped the way of thinking of Mao Zedong and his ideas of not accepting the idea of imperialism that only caused more potential turmoil and gave suffering to the people of China. Besides trying to centralizing the idea of decision-making power and succeed at it, Mao has also tried to create his personality cult. The evidence of this statement can be seen when Mao was publishing what was called as the world's second most published book, the Little Red Book, during the famous Cultural Revolution in 1964 until 1976. This book can be perceived as the keystone to Mao's complex personality cult. It was said that 1 billion copies circulated in the Cultural Revolution. The population poured over it in a daily session. Illiterate farmers memorized chunk by heart. In these words, it can be seen that Mao's influence on his personality cult has won over the hearts and head of people who agreed and supporting him and his ideas of communism. This shows that he also became a symbol of socialism and how powerful it is and a symbol of equality and gave hope and fights for the workers' class, which the capitalist leader wouldn't do. During his times as the president of China, Mao Zedong was worshipped like a god from the perspective of Chinese that really gave ways to nation development through his magical idea. Mao did not like that, especially when he's bracing the importance of people's voice over anything. Mao commented on the speech of Edgar Snow in the Cultural Revolution that Chinese has gone too far into his ideas, praising him and raised his ideas like a part of their religious thoughts. Mao expressed that there should be time for personality cult, the situation that show how the follower worship the leader as the human nature of desire to be worshipped and to be worshipped. It showed that Mao's idea of leaders and followers really show his style as what characters of leader he is. His charismatic ways of leadership was based on his idea that a leader should be praised until the core of narcissism, giving the idea that the leader the power of command and not to be vulnerable. The peculiar thing about Mao is how he sees himself as a leader, giving a peculiar metaphor in his letter to his wife. He described himself as being part monkey, which impatient, unpredictable, quick to provoke and tease, and part tiger, the leader who is feared, unexpected, and also dangerous. His own self-reflection on his leadership is quite true, as he is unpredictable, respected, and show how ambivalent he is when dealing with certain things that require him to change his personality. From Mao Zedong listed personality, it can be seen that his style and personality of leadership is more towards direct leadership. As this proof that the proof and facts can be seen as he led his men to fight the Japanese in the mountain region during the World War II. He also implemented his own policy by giving speech and writing a book to influence the country and its people to support the cause of socialism. Now we take a look at Deng Xiaoping's personality. Deng Xiaoping emerged as the new leader of China, as the new successor of Mao Zedong, as the new ruler of the world's most populous nation in 1978. Despite his early years' issues with Mao, the new leader finally emerged, although he is not Mao's choice as his successor. Deng's approach and idea is different, although that he embraced the same ideology of Marxism in the ruling government through China Communist Party. His idea is not less nationalism. His idea is more to opening up the market and economy to the outside world, something that Mao was not willing to do and risk. Deng Xiaoping takes the position of the Chinese leader at a time when the countries has already suffered a heavy loss from the Cultural Revolution. The economy of China at that moment is not progressing. The economic growth was low as a result of economic isolationism that Mao implemented. That situation has become the idea of Deng Xiaoping's ideas towards a better economic future, something that will cause the risk of nationalist protests and also from the CCP itself. Deng Xiaoping is a realist, which is different than the other CCP leaders who were more to idealistic policy. His policy of economic reform that needs to be adopted to improve the economy requires Mao to choose whether to modify Mao's idealism or abandon it. Deng choose to modify it, as the Mao's ideology has bring too much nationalism movement and unite the country as one. His idea of Tao Guang Yang Hui was also strategically proposed as China's approach to explore the upper world market, at the same time keep the influences low so the major power did not feel threatened by China's potential. This proved that Deng Xiaoping is also a strategically thinking leader. After the year 1978, the Deng's economic reform has took its shape and the impact grew more apparent. The reform has granted a title of hands-off leader who developed economic policies, but he used the authority to others for them to carry out the plan. As he was called the hands-off leader, he became the figure to head the diplomatic initiative, economic tactics, and repairing the relationship with China, in which the Chinese were not agreed much on the policy. Deng was described as a great Marxist, great proletarian revolutionary, statesman, military strategist, diplomat, a great architect of China's socialist, and the founder of Deng Xiaoping's theory. The ideology has proved that the government has obtained the idealistic and capable leaders of multi-talent in leading China into bigger and larger development chance of growing their economics in the socialist society. From all of this personality of Deng Xiaoping that has been listed, we can see that his style and personality of leadership is more towards indirect leadership. His title of Heads of Leader has shown that he is a leader who opened the door and leads the way for his officer to follow, maintaining his policy and aim towards Greater China. That's all for me. Now we pass on to the next presenter. Aisyah, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you very much, Reza, for your. Sorry. Thank you very much, Reza. Okay. I would like to move on to the Mao Zedong failure and the Deng Xiaoping reformation of China. Before I move forward to the great leap forward of Mao Zedong campaign, I would like to introduce some what we call that a campaign that also launched by Mao Zedong before the Great Leap Forward. Okay, this 100 Flowers campaign in 1956. The campaign was launched because Mao actually wanted the people of China to let off steam by saying whatever criticism they wanted. But actually Mao thinking of something like more appropriate criticism, but they many of people of China express their dislike and complaints to Mao Zedong. But Mao Zedong is very angry about that, and he then the 100 Flowers campaign soon ended, and then free speech was prohibited and the press was censored. Okay, because of that, a lot of people were sent to the labor camp, and then after that, Mao Zedong launched another campaign, which is the Great Leap Forward on 1958. Okay, what is actually the Great Leap Forward 1958? Okay, it is a 5-year plan aimed at strengthening agriculture and industry. This campaign is focusing on agriculture and industry because of the harvest was a great production on 1958. So Mao thinking that, oh, we can actually make this bigger, make our China bigger to modernize China. So yeah, he intended to make China a world-class economy by 1980. And at that time, he wanted to change China from a backward state to a superpower state. Okay, by launching this, communists were encouraged to establish backyard production furnaces to create steel from scrap metal. But because of lack of coordination and knowledge, resulted in material shortage and waste of manpower. This is all destroyed because of the material that the goods actually that produced by the factories were low quality. And also, the plant was also disaster because of small common factories, like I said just now, and then the combination of poor weather that happened in China at that time. Farmers neglected to lead to sharp drops in agriculture production. This is because of um, before this, in agriculture, they are the farmers or the peasants use traditional method. But in this campaign, they use like agriculture experiments, so they have no knowledge at all. Okay, of course, Mao Zedong Great Leap Forward was a social and political campaign that was very failed on this campaign, causing the economic regression, which is not a one step forward, but actually few step backward, and the deaths of million people from starvation because of this campaign. Okay, next. Okay. Okay. After the what we call that the Great Leap Forward was a very failure dismissal. So Mao thinking that he wanted to do another campaign, which is cultural revolution in 1966. Okay, after the failure of the Great Leap Forward, Mao felt that he need to revive the revolutionary spirit because he want to turn China into a modernized state. So millions of young people left school and joined military unit called the Red Guards. In this Red Guard is actually known as major uprising known as Cultural Revolution. Okay, what is the goal of this Cultural Revolution? It was to create a classless society where everybody is equal. That is, it seems like a communism ideology, which everyone is equal. No one is a high class or lower class. Okay, and then the intellectual and artists was considered to be dangerous because when they are what we call that when they are rich person, intellectual person, artist person, so they are what we call that different rankings, so they think these people are dangerous, so we have to kill them. So a lot of people were killed in this cultural revolution in 1966. Okay, the Red Guards shut down school and universities, so because they think that they are very, very dangerous, they will actually against them, against the government. Okay, next step, next slide. Okay, what are the four oaths where Qing Mao and the Red Guards felt China need to get rid? It is old custom, custom of China, old culture of China, old habits of China, and old ideas of China. All this happened because of they wanted to get rid because of they think that by having these four old custom, culture, habits, and idea will not lead China to a superpower state. Were not increasing or generate income of China. So they have to get rid of this. Okay, and then but the cultural revolution resulted in widespread chaos because people were often turning on neighbors, friends, and enemies. Production virtually stopped, of course, because of factories is closed, university is closed, school is closed, and China seemed on the verge of civil war again. Okay, and then by 1976, Mao even admitted the Cultural Revolution had to end and had the Red Guard disbanded because of this turn into chaos. So they have to end this campaign of Cultural Revolution. Next. Okay, so we move to next slide, which is Deng Xiaoping of China Reformation. After the Mao was dead, and then Deng was the second generation of leadership in China. Okay, Deng created a new brand of socialist thinking that is called of socialism, with China's characteristic, a little bit of China's characteristic, and lead opening socialist market economy. Why actually Deng what you call that open this socialist market economy? Because he think that opening this market economy will actually make China become more related with other country and expanding the economy of China. Okay, Deng made relation with the West leader. Of course, he is the first Chinese leader that met the American president at that time. Okay, he opened China to see the West country as friend and asking them to invest in China. Why? Because by investing, so they have a lot of connection networking. Okay, and industry sector sustaining China economic market system. Then Deng visited to Japan as a good example as rapidly progressing economic power, because at that time they think, oh, okay, Japan maybe become our what we call that idol, so we can visit them to gain some idea. Okay, and then China implemented a new system calling as one country, two system for Hong Kong and Portugal. For political system, China holds directly to two countries, but for economy, China give full authority to two countries as the center for business. Then program of reform calling Gauge Kaifang, which is reforms and openness. Okay, what is actually this Gauge Kaifang, which is a reform and openness? Its goal is improving relation with outside world, because before that China is actually not too open to other country. So by making this reformation, China is more what we call that, have networking with other state. Okay, then the reformation in domestic, social, political, and of course economic system. The goals of Deng reform were summed up by the four modernization. Okay, next slide. Okay, what is the four modernization? Which is the number one is agriculture, number two industry, number three science and technology, and number four military. Okay, by making of this four type of modernization, then think that by making this will modernize China in opening their market to other country, and making like one child policy, which are called regulated the most comprehensive family planning initiative in the world, the one child, because one family only has one child. Okay, then he introduced autonomous economic management and reasonable and scalable long-term planning. In what we can see, the differences between Mao and Deng is Mao is actually direct leadership, and Deng is indirect. Mao, it seems like we can see that he is like forcing people to obey to his rule, but Deng is more focused on economy, how to make China rise. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, now let's get into the conclusion. So, in a nutshell, I would like to say that leadership and leadership qualities are very important to transform a nation. Throughout the presentation by other presenters, you could have seen the vast differences between those two leaders and how they contributed to the countries. And then, for example, bad leadership could be detrimental, and meanwhile, good leadership leads to development. So, what would I like to say is, when I say bad leadership, for example, both are actually good leaders. They wanted to lead the people. But then, when you look into Mao Zedong, he does not accept critiques, and he is a leader, but then he doesn't accept critics. That is quite a bad leadership. Meanwhile, when you look into his policies, the Great Leap Year and the revolution, it leads to a detrimental phase of the China's people. So that is somewhat a bad leadership. Meanwhile, good leadership, we can look into Deng Xiaoping's economic modernization, which eventually people accepted him as leader, and really unemployed people and the youngsters like his policies because he opened up the economies and helped the people to develop their life. So this shows the difference between good leadership and bad leadership. And meanwhile, if China didn't pursue free market strategy by Deng Xiaoping, it would have remained the same as before, because they are a communist country, and if they never open up their market, they would have been their economy would have been stagnant, and they would never become the China they are today, like the world's second largest economy right now. So actually, I would like to say Deng Xiaoping contributes a lot to China's economic development, and he had good leadership qualities. It's like, I would like to say that people always nowadays, currently, if we look into China, people always bragging about Xi Jinping alone. it is not actually enough to talk about Xi Jinping only, because the history is important. When we look back, if Deng Xiaoping did not open the free market economic trades between other countries, China would have never become what it is right now. And everyone should be able to develop good leadership qualities to contribute in different sectors. Because if you see, leadership is everything right now. If you don't have good leading qualities, for example, we can see from Mao Zedong, it would be detrimental. I would like to emphasize more that it would be detrimental. So I think we have give great explanation about different types of leadership and how it contributes and how effective it is throughout our presentation. And thank you. That's all from us.